Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome back to 10 Count. I'm Steve Falbert. Today, I'm traveling into space with Jesus, Space Jesus, that is. Billie Starkz, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing great. We were just talking about the holidays and how everything's going so swell for everybody. But you, 18 years old, seem to have everything figured out in life. But I'm not sure. And today, we'll discuss that, and maybe we'll find out there are flaws in your master plan of taking over the world someday in professional wrestling. How'd you even get started? Because it shows that you started when you were 14,
I actually started when I was 13.
10 years old. How do you,
Yeah.
how does that happen? Like, I had a backyard wrestling federation when I was 13 on a trampoline, but obviously 13 for you, completely different.
Yeah, it was actually kind of crazy. I was doing photos at the time for wrestling and just going around and taking photos, and I was taking photos for Girl Fight. And the promoter, Madman Pondo, introduced me to a training school who would train me at 13. And that ended up being where I trained at Grindhouse Pro Wrestling. And I slowly just I was still a cheerleader at the time, and then I like went after cheer practice one day, and went to wrestling training, and they were like, "Oh, you want to get in the ring?" And I've never stopped wanting to be in a ring since.
Wow. So then you were taking pictures of professional wrestling. So obviously you were a fan before that. And how did you even, people always say they're channel surfing or a friend introduced them or a family member. How did you get into professional wrestling?
Mine's very basic. It was a family member. My dad literally loved wrestling, and came into my life and introduced me to pro wrestling, and it's been stuck in my mind of like that's what I want my career to be, since I was very, very little.
So what wrestler was the person to grab you and bring you in? Because for me, it was the Big Boss Man. That's a long time ago. But with you, what wrestler like boom, you saw them and like I have to keep watching.
It was definitely Bayley. I was very attracted to Bayley when I first started watching wrestling, especially like her NXT era.
Oh yeah.
I remember like a lot of that. I was very attached to that part of wrestling, and there's still like a part of me who will like go back and watch the matches and be like, "Oh, this is so nice."
Bayley versus Sasha Banks in Brooklyn for NXT Takeover was monumental for women's
Yeah.
wrestling, for any wrestling, because of how good it was. They tried to top it with an hour and a half an hour Iron Woman match. I don't think it could compare to Brooklyn because it was like, and then obviously if you're a Bayley fan, you watch that documentary where Bayley is like rewatching her match with Sasha Banks over and over with her at the time boyfriend, and she was clearly proud of that match. And Bayley brought you into the world of professional wrestling, and it's very interesting because as a young kid going to wrestling school, you're still going to eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. You're still in high school doing these types of things. How do you explain to your friends or even your teachers, like, hey, I have all these bruises all over me, or hey, I'm getting beat up and I have a black eye? Because that screams domestic abuse in a hospital. But for you and your friends, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just trained to be a professional wrestler.
Yeah, so it was definitely very strange for my teachers to see these things. In my middle school, everybody kind of just found out. Um, and it was like, "Oh, she's a wrestler, it's fine." Uh, and then when I went to high school, I didn't think anything of it because I was in middle school and everybody didn't really care.
Mm.
And then my first like 2 weeks of high school, I had like a teacher pull me out in the hallway, and bless her heart, she was like, "Hey, so the past few weeks she's just been covered in bruises. Is everything okay at home?" And I'm like confused. I'm like, "What is
Mm.
this woman talking about?" I was like, "Oh, you think I'm getting beat? Please don't call CPS on my mother." And I explained that I was a pro wrestler and showed her videos. And then it slowly like leaked to everybody else. And I remember like freshman year, my career options class, my teacher would play my wrestling videos in front of the entire class. I was like,
Nice.
"Oh, this is nice." But I'm also one of those people, I don't like watching my matches in front of people. So I have
Mm-hmm.
all of my classmates and peers just watching me wrestle. And I was like, okay.
I can imagine at first, like the first day, like, oh, this is cool. And the second day, you're like, okay, I don't want to keep watching myself. It's like someone asking you to tell that funny joke you told to me yesterday. It won't be funny now that you're making me do it. And obviously, professional wrestling for you is an art or a style, and you don't want your friends who are also say asking you to go to prom or not go to prom or hang out with me after school, being like, "I think she's busy. I think she's busy." And obviously, training such at such a young age, there must be a point in time where you are sacrificing, a quote unquote, a normal childhood because suddenly you're choosing to go train or go travel. Did that affect your real life? Because it had to have.
It definitely has. Like when I first started wrestling in middle school, I feel like I lost a lot of friends. But I also learned who are like my true friends and gonna
Mm,
stick around forever.
right.
I have had like two best friends since the sixth grade, and I still talk to them to this day. And they've always been dealing with my shenanigans, my wrestling. And I have missed so many of their birthdays, and I've always apologized. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't come party. I'm sorry, I can't do this. And they're like, no, we understand. You're going to be famous one day. Go live your life. We're always going to be here. And that's always been like what has pushed me as a wrestler because it's like, oh, I don't have to worry about my friends and family back home. They understand what I'm doing and they understand I love this.
Right. Because obviously, wrestling's on a weekend usually, Saturday and Sundays, Friday nights as well, depending where you live. So you can always find wrestling locally anywhere you live. You just got to kind of find it sometimes. And obviously, for you, at such a young age, right now, there must be this weird feeling inside you because of, for instance, I requested to interview you. Sean Ross Sapp has interviewed you. There have been multiple matches. You've had big time matches already. You're like 18 years old. So
Hmm.
how do you wrap that into your brain? Because obviously this is just the beginning of what's to come. And already people are already treating you like you're probably, I don't know how you feel about it, but we're treating you like you're bigger than we ever could imagine. Oh my God, she's 18, she's doing these amazing things. But when someone tells you that, are you actually accepting these things? Or does that become kind of a challenge in your body being like, am I this good? Am I that great? Or do I want to believe my own hype?
It's almost like I feel like I'm still like a normal person at the end of the
Right.
day. And that might be like my childness and like, oh, I'm just like everybody else in my brain. And it's a lot of like positivity that comes my way. And I'm like, I don't understand a lot of it. And I understand like the things I'm doing are good. But there's also like me doubting myself. I'm
Mm.
like, oh, is this as good as I want it to be? Because there's other people telling me that was a great match. That was a great match, and I'm sitting in the corner like that match sucked.
Right. That's a good
um,
point too. Are people feeding you shit or not feeding you, or telling you the truth? Because obviously, if you're
I
having the
just
best
don't know
match
what's
every
real.
night, right? I would say that could be a problem because they're obviously. I talked to a few wrestlers this morning, and they were talking about how they don't want people to tell them how great their matches are. They want them like, what did I not do right? What do you think I could improve? Not great match. You killed it out there, champ. And then you're
I
like,
feel like that's what I struggle with, like in wrestling the most is finding honest feedback. I'm very, very lucky that I've had my dad in wrestling for so long. And he also has somewhat of a wrestling brain. So he'll look at a match and be like, why'd you do this?
hmm.
Do something else. Or, hey, what's this? And I know he's not coming to attack me or tear me down. He's just telling me things so I can fix it and be better for next time.
Right. And obviously your dad you can trust versus another wrestler who's like, great job, you're doing great. Because obviously when you're in the backstage area with, friends and family or wrestlers who are all trying to get going as well, but it feels like a rocket ship was attached to you by accident and it doesn't make any sense to these people probably, but they're always going to tell you how great you are because of such a young age. So like that's
Mhm.
why I brought up the future because obviously if you're doing so well now, you would think in history would show that the older you get, the better you get. And most likely it'll happen to you. But I keep finding posters of you on intergender matches. Is this something you enjoy? Because it's very bizarre in professional wrestling where people kind of like love it or hate it. But in a movie or a TV show, when a guy fights a girl and the guy beats up the girl beats up the guy, no one's like, oh, oh my god, how could they do this? But in wrestling, I've seen it feels like because people are like, oh, wrestling's fake. Oh, wrestling's too real. Like I don't know which one you want. How do you feel about this critique of intergender wrestling?
I've always looked at it as it's another wrestler versus another wrestler, not as like male and female.
Mm,
I feel like so many people make that line and I don't understand it because I've always enjoyed it as a wrestler because I'm like, oh, I get new talent to wrestle. There's so many more guys in wrestling than females, and this gives me access to so many more opponents and so many matches. And I don't understand why people try to divide men and women. At the end of the day, we're all competitors. We're all trained the same way. Why can't we compete together? And I also don't understand the hate towards it.
yeah.
I just I truly, as a person, I don't understand why people have so much hatred towards it. And I've heard like the argument of like, oh, it reminds like people of like domestic abuse at some point.
Right.
And I was like, okay, but if we're saying that, why are you watching wrestling? Because what about a lesbian relationship and there's two females fighting? That could also be considered domestic abuse. And then there's males and males fighting each other. That's domestic abuse. If this is something that triggers you, please just stay away from it. I completely understand that. But at the end of the day, you have to let people do these things so we can grow as wrestlers. I
Mhm.
was like, I have honestly learned so much being in the ring with guys, and I've learned so much being in the ring with women. But if I had the divide of, oh, I can't wrestle these guys at all, I don't think I would have improved so quickly in wrestling if I didn't have those matches.
Interesting point you bring up because that is true. I think with like, for instance, we'll go mainstream WWE based on their sponsorships. Most likely, those sponsors look at it and go, "Well, we don't want to see a man punch a woman in the face because
Yeah.
we're, Hallmark. We don't want to see that." I guess through that, it's corporations who really have decided on the is it okay in mainstream to have intergender matches because suddenly, for instance, Rhea Ripley, Raw, WWE, she body slams men recently, and it suddenly turned into like this. When she body slams them, they sell it like they got shot in the gut. But yet, when a man body slams another man, it's just a body slam. It's very interesting how dynamics have changed in wrestling. I know Jim Ross, good old JR, hates intergender wrestling, and that's his opinion, I guess. But like you brought up, if it's going to trigger you, then why are you watching this? Because there are plenty of wrestlers who play, say, like a terrorist character, but they're not terrorists. Like they're actors, just like in a TV show. If you watch Breaking Bad, are you? They're not really doing drugs, people. They're not really dealing drugs. So I wonder why
I
people
feel
are so
like people
judgmental.
just struggled for that divide. They don't know where to divide wrestling of like what is real and what is fake. And our whole job is to make you believe.
Yeah.
And some people just are uncomfortable with that. And I don't understand that because I have been told before that I make people uncomfortable when I'm wrestling
Hmm.
because people truly believe I'm hurt and they're worried about me. And I was like, well, isn't that me doing my job? And then I've been told to like stop doing this, stop doing this, and I'm like, no, I'm doing what I'm supposed to because I'm getting the reaction that I want.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. Again, either wrestling's too fake or too real for people. It's insanity. But 2022, you were ranked 52 on the Pro Wrestling Illustrated top 150 women wrestlers. That's got to be crazy because again, 52 out of 150, you're 18 years old. How does that make you feel?
Definitely encourage. It's one of those things I really do like seeing myself in PWI because uh looking at like the year before, I was like, oh, I've improved and it shows improvement.
Hmm?
And it went from like my number being like double that last year and then this year being number 50 something. My brain's fried.
52.
52. I was literally, I think, like 105, 106, like the year before. And I was like, oh my God, I must have gotten better because I moved up so much. And it's hard to see in the moment and like keep wrestling, keep doing this, keep living my life. And I'm like, oh, I feel kind of stagnant. Have I actually been getting better or have I just been doing the same thing?
Mm,
And I feel like I always just want to be getting better. I feel like there's some times where I feel like I've just gotten too comfortable with the same things. I'm like, what can I do to change it up? What can I do that's different?
Well, what you're doing right now is working, so maybe don't change what you're doing right now because everyone seems to be in love with you. You fought Ruby Soho. Would that be your biggest match to date?
Ooh, I've had a lot of crazy matches, but Ruby was definitely one of the biggest moments for me. I really
Right.
enjoyed our match.
Yeah, because again, she's like a name people all it jumps out as like, oh my God. And then on a poster seeing you two against each other, be like, oh, usually people go to see, the marquee face you recognize, and then they come see you as well. And you're like, oh my God, this match is amazing. So that had to have been a dream moment for you as well, because it's gotta be cool. It's gotta be cool. But the fact that you started at 13 years old and here you are now, like what do you have for your goals for the future? Because again, so young. You told me earlier, 5 in the morning, you're waking up tomorrow, then you're going somewhere, then you're going to school, then you're going to work, then most likely some wrestling stuff. Like you are busy. What do you have in front of you for your goals?
I plan on moving out, trying to at least next year. And then I'm also going to college. I signed up for a semester and I'm going to college. Um, my tuition is paid for, don't have to worry about any of it. And I'm figuring life out slowly, and I've just become an adult. So there's a lot of things I'm working on, but I'm going to try to travel overseas more. I finally made it over to Japan, and that was my first time out of the country, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I would love to travel more. So that's my plan so far.
Oh man, I think the Performance Center is going to be calling you very soon, going, "Hello, would you like to come here and have a look see?" And I feel like that's going to happen. And if it does happen, I'm assuming you'll like accept their offer.
Yes, most likely. Depends where my where life takes me. I'm one of those people, I really enjoy just like hooking on for the ride and seeing what happens and what opportunities arrive, because I don't want to expect things that will never come
Mm.
or never do.
So you're a person who jumps in the river and lets it take you down. Hit a few rocks on the way. That's okay because you'll still get to the bottom. That's
Hmm.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, Bill Starkz, thank you so much for being here on 10 Count. I really appreciate hearing your story because this is something I think people need to know, because there's plenty of people out there who want to follow their dreams or sometimes are afraid, or they build walls inside their own brain saying they can't do it. But clearly, you have done it here and you're doing it. So again, thank you so much for being here on 10 Count. I've been Steve Fall. She's been Billie Starkz. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.